So, hey everyone, today I'll be talking about designing killer CLIs for your platform teams. Um, Basically, I'll be talking about how you can make intuitive and really powerful CLI tools for all of your platform teams. We'll be going over some design ideologies and some design philosophies that you can use to make your CLI tools even more intuitive for your platform teams. So a little introduction about me. I'm a software security engineer at Block. I'm a graduate from Georgia Tech, and I'm mostly in the cybersecurity and AI space. But I also love to do development and building tools that can empower me to do a lot of good things. Um, so let's jump in. So why do CLIs actually matter, right? So developers generally work in text editors and terminals, right? A CLI lives in the same world. So by automating common tasks into commands, a CLI lets developers stay in the flow and get things done really faster. So in this talk, I'll be discussing on how to design such CLIs and end with some practical tips for platform teams. So generally, CLIs equal to speed and familiarity, right? The terminal is a natural home for many developers. So think of CLIs as shortcuts for workflows, and our goal is just to basically have a few keystrokes away for everyday tasks. That's how CLI should be, right? So, why do developers love great CLIs? Let's talk about like the psychology behind that. So psychologically, CLIs appeal to how developers think, right? So we like grouping complex operations into single commands, like for example, deploy or build or create issues, etc. So as one writer notes, uh, so I was reading um, this article when one of the writers, he just said that the human brain, it tends to analyze, group and link complex things into single words, right? So a CLI basically does the job of splitting this complex system into many small functions and assigns each function into a simple command. But unlike the GUIs, which might overwhelm with so many buttons, a CLI limits your expectations, right? So your focus is only on typing the right verb and object, and the predictability and speed is why developers love good CLIs. And developers are basically the power users of the keyboard and the terminal, right? So CLIs just give them the direct power to use these tools to achieve the task that they want to do. And of course, they're like super efficient CLIs, and you can also use them in scripts. Like if you like want to achieve something with multiple tools, you can just write a bash script about it and just get it done with that. So now I'll be going into details about the principles here. So the first principle that I'm going to talk about is intelligent defaults and automation, and this is something that you should be considering while designing these CLI tools. So if your like CLI has a main action, like for example running a command without flags, it should do it, right? And the CLI should infer what it can from the user. So for example, tools often like read from config files or environment variables to avoid the making the user to specify like an ID or token all the time. So for example, if you have a secret, you store it in like a config file or maybe like an environment variable so that you don't ask it again and again from the user from the as a CLI argument. Um, so you basically try to automate as much of the app setup process as you can, so that developers can just get going and running quickly with the tool or the software that they plan to use. One good example of that is the GitHub CLI. So like common workflows like creating an issue or a PR are just one step, right? So you normally switch to in general, if you're like using the GitHub UI, you need to first switch to the browser, navigate to the click like the new issue button, and there are a bunch of steps involved, right? A bunch of click ops involved here. But with the GitHub CLI, I can just do this with one single command, and it makes the workflow like significantly faster. And if you have heard of a tool called Vercel, it does a pretty similar thing. where it, like if you, for example, run a command like vercel hyphen hyphen prod in project, it will create and link a deployment automatically and storing the project IDs in a .vercel directory, and just default to these behaviors to make the experience of using these tools pretty simple and easy. So the general idea is in this principle is that you hide the complexities behind defaults. So you run the obvious action by default. You read configurations from the context and generate a needed boilerplate. Um, so this is mostly what I wanted to say about the first principle. Now we can jump into the second principle, which is about progressive disclosure and discoverability. So the idea here is to keep the UI, like the CLI UI, simple until the user needs more. So, so for example, in case of a CLI tool, that means that your base command or top level command shows only like your base command or top level help only shows the most important commands. So you might have like advanced feature flags that could be hidden under subcommands, but you don't show them at once. So like if you like end up showing all of these tools, all of these flags at once with just one help command, then it will be too overwhelming for new users. So we do progressive disclosure here, which is basically give beginners only the basic commands and let power users handle all of the advanced functionalities and complexities by slowly disclosing to them through these like advanced options. So for example, your CLI can do something in basic mode. You can have like a basic mode where it does anything without like a lot of flags. It just runs. But if the user needs something very uncommon or like a very rare flag that someone might not even use in their daily workflows, then they can run help on that command and just use that flag. So many CLIs actually use help in sub commands as well. So you can have like a main command, then a sub command, and then help, which drills down the whole help menu for the sub command itself, like all of the flags for that sub command. And that way, the interface never feels like too crowded, right? So the idea here is you just test what a new user sees first, and it should be intuitive and easy to use. And they should also automatically figure out or know where to look for more options if they intend to do that. So, with that, let's talk about principle three, which is clear communication and helpful errors. Now, this is pretty important. So, great CLIs speak the developer's language and habits. So, on success, you just don't generally just have a done message from the command, like, or just like a plain silence after running the command is enough, because a developer is able to understand that the command did run successfully. Only in the case that there's an error, you can just throw it to the standard out saying that, hey, this is an error and you might need to fix something. So for example, if an option is missing or invalid, we just say exactly what is wrong. So you just tell the person that, hey, this target option is missing, please use hyphen hyphen target, and also give them an example or a hint about how to use it. And lastly, just craft the micro copy very carefully. So usually try to keep your commands active and in the imperative format. So basically, you'll have the verb first and then the noun second. And that's exactly how it matches psychologically when a developer reads it. So, for example, they'd expect a CLI tool to have create project rather than the tool and then project and then create. Right? It's basically verb first and then the noun second. So the consistency here is important. So if you decide on the verb first and noun second format, it should be consistent across all of your commands. And the important part also here is how you handle feedback and errors with the CLI tool. So good, you just imagine this mantra, right? Good news whispers, bad news shouts. So if a build or deploy goes well, just finish quietly. But if it fails, give every detail to the developer that he or she needs to debug it, and immediately telling the user what they missed. And also include the hyphen hyphen help hints, uh, or just like use some other options to decide what could be done to fix it. And lastly, craft the micro copy carefully. And as I said, like you can use active imperative commands where the verb is first and the noun is second. And now we can move on to the fourth principle, which is balancing power and simplicity. So in this case, you design your tool for both newcomers as well as power users, but newcomers should be seeing the simplicity and the power users should be seeing the flexibility and speed. So you can have expert modes where you have advanced usage and only to those who want full control of the system, and you obviously hide them from the the beginner users unless they explicitly request for it. And generally try to follow Unix conventions. Unix CLI tools, just try to look at how they are designed, and conventionally try to follow the Unix ideology of writing CLI tools, because a lot of people are generally well versed with Unix tools, and they don't want to disrupt their workflow about how these tools works versus your tool, right? And um, yeah, and with that, I'd like to give you an example of the GitHub CLI. So it is a really nice intuitive CLI tool. It brings a lot of the terminal operations for us. So for example, in this case, if you want to check out the status of a PR, you just do GHPR status, and you can see whether the checks are passing, if there are any changes requested. Just with one CLI command, you can do that instead of too many of these click ops. um, so how would you like modernize an internal CLI tool? uh, so before, developers might be having scattered scripts or ad hoc CLIs with inconsistent naming, but you can replace that with a unified CLI with just one CLI tool that will use all of these scattered scripts together. And you can use tools like frameworks like Cobra, Clap, etc., and use standardized commands for that. And always add a help command, a help flag, provide clear messages, and offer features like tab completions. A lot of developers appreciate something like tab completion. And if you do these kinds of things, you'll notice that your adoption will increase dramatically. And developers will most likely choose over the new CLI over the homegrown scripts because it is easy to learn. Um, so tips for building these CLIs today is use a good CLI framework. There are tons of them. You can choose the one which you like. Use write good help and documentation. Support things like autocomplete, and iterate with users. Constantly get feedback from teams and see what is working, what is not, and have consistent styling where it aligns with the terminology of your ecosystem. Uh, and with that, I'd like to move to the summary and actionable takeaways. So remember that developer happiness with your platform tools translates directly to productivity. So if you have a great CLI, it's actually a silent hero. So when it works, developers just don't even notice, but they just zip through tasks. But a bad CLI is actually a daily annoyance. So, by following the principles we discussed, automation, simplicity, clarity, and the right power balance, you can make your platform tools something people want to use. So, go back to your team CLIs and ask, what is one painful step we can eliminate? Could we make the default smarter? Could errors be friendlier? And the answer to those questions will actually guide your next improvements. So remember that good CLIs have fewer clicks and fewer tickets. Um, and use these guidelines as a checklist whenever you are building your new CLI. With that, I'd like to end my presentation. These are the links where you can connect with me. You can get these slides by either scanning the QR code or just going to this link. Thank you.